Hello and welcome to the Doula Debrief Podcast from Community Doula Alliance. Our inaugural episode will discuss the work of a doula and the impact that they make in birth work.
Welcome to the Doula Debrief Podcast from Community Doula Alliance, a place where we will take a deep dive into birth work with honest conversations about childbirth.
Hosted by childbirth educator, doula, and CDA board member Marnellie Bishop, alongside postpartum doula and mental health advocate Ali Buchanan.
We aim to offer you a safe space, strategies and resources, and fuel to empower and educate and advocate for the future of maternal health. Welcome, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
We're so excited to be on this inaugural episode of the Doula Debrief.
Our first podcast, getting going. Let's go. Let's bring it out to the world because doulas make a difference.
But what is a doula? A doula is a key member of the birth team. What role does that doula serve, Ali?
Definitely mental, emotional, physical support. But I know within the doula community, right, there's a big discourse on whether they're an advocate. I think we are advocates, but there are some that say no. I don't understand that, but hey, to each his own.
I think the word advocate and how it's defined on the individual doula is what's important. So, for example, like your doula is not your voice,
right?
But is an advocate so that you are heard, so that your voice is heard.
Right.
So, for example, in a high-stress situation at a birth, a doula might say, hey, nurse, I'm noticing that we're deviating from the birth plan. And what that does is cue the birthing family to be like, oh, yeah, this is not what I want. I'm wanting this.
Right.
That's that advocacy role that doulas fill, is to call out when we see harm being done, or when we see that the path of the birth is deviating away from what the family's desires are for that birth experience.
Right.
So, when you think about doulas, I think in the public sphere, people think doulas are this added benefit, or people that have doulas are people that have. Well, that's where Community Doula Alliance is here to change it.
Right. It's not something that should be optional, right? Everybody deserves this type of care.
Right. And that's what the doulas of Community Doula Alliance and Community Doula Alliance as an organization is here to change, here to make the service of a doula or the benefit of having a doula accessible to underserved communities, specifically Black, Indigenous, Latino AX, Asian, pretty much any community that
is marginalized. It can feel that they don't have a voice or that have troubles navigating the system. And that is wonderful because not only you have this kind of systemic and historical issues that those people have to, that those populations have to face, right? But you also just naturally, you want to have healthy birth outcomes. And that's what a doula will do. They increase healthy birth outcomes time and time again. The research shows that. Yeah. With, I think, what is it? It's like 30% decrease in cesarean rates, 41%, I think, when it comes to shorter labor times. So yeah, just looking at all of those numbers, why not have it for everybody?
Well, and if you're not looking at numbers, just the experience itself. Yeah. So having somebody on your team to ensure that you have a positive experience with your birth, even if it takes a different turn.
Right.
And, somebody who has that experience of birth, who has seen birth in different capacities, from home birth to birth center to hospital birth, and all of that stuff in between, a doula can look objectively at an individual's birth experience and say, hey, I see you're going through this issue in your birth. So, for example, I see that we might have an OP baby, OP, occiput posterior, sunny side up baby. Here are things, reaching in the doula tool bag, these are the things that we can try to do to flip your baby.
Right.
What's important about that is I think doulas take those steps to learn and understand that training. Because we aren't being driven by policy, driven by procedures, and we kind of look at what works best for this family.
And I think that is something where it goes down to the preparation, right? I think, you know, in the doula industrial complex, right? Like there's all of these pressures of like, oh, I'm trained as a childbirth educator. You know, you're a childbirth educator, right? But like really we all have that kind of intuitive notion, even as parents, even as birthing people, we have that intuitive knowledge of what we would like to have, or like, you know, oh, the provider said this is not sitting well with me. Why is that? And taking those conversations and giving them the resources, sending them
the articles.
Yeah. Articles upon articles, or, you know, giving them the anecdotal evidence of, hey, you know, I had somebody who had this experience and, you know, these were the options. And I think it goes down to options. What are we giving these individuals to build their toolkit, to be successful, to be confident and comfortable in making the decision for themselves? So that's powerful.
So this is having me think about a myth of what doulas do, or what doulas are, or what type of births do doulas support. So the myth is that doulas are only for home birth or hospital births that want to go unmedicated.
Kind of like midwives.
Kind of like
midwives. The midwifery care model. I think people are always like, oh yeah, you know, I want to be in the hospital, so I didn't want a midwife, and not realizing that you can have that type of care and that support and that person in your corner in all types of birth. It's not a cookie cutter.
Yeah. So debunk it for me, Ali. Why is
me?
Yes,
you're the one that brought it up, girl.
Well, I want to know, like, how of the myth of that doulas are only for unmedicated birth, that doulas are only for physiologic birth.
I think it starts there, to be honest. I think a lot of individuals who say, I want an unmedicated birth, therefore I will get a doula. And what really ends up happening is something beautiful, is that then they find out that doula can do so much more in that piece of preparation, where you're saying, in the event it doesn't go your way, these are things that may happen. These are the conversations your provider might have with you. And how are we going to help you understand that and navigate that? So I think I'm okay with the myth if that happens, because we will be there for a cesarean birth. You know, like we will be there for, whether it's emergency or scheduled, we can be there for you. Yeah, I'm okay with that myth.
I'm okay with the myth. But and I would say that doulas, I agree with you that yes, initially, that is definitely probably why people look for a doula first, is I want to avoid that cascade of intervention.
Yes.
And one way that I think that might happen is if I have a doula in my court. So how the doula then changes that conversation, or the mindset of that cascade, is actually how to use those different interventions, should they be necessary, in an effective way and in a way that is empowering for that birthing family. So time and time again, I hear clients say, well, I want to have an unmedicated birth, but I know that birth can go any way, and I need to be open to or flexible with what happens, and I might want an epidural. Okay, as the doula in that relationship, I'm like, well, let's unpack that. Like, why do you want to be unmedicated? Tell me all the whys. And then...
Is it because it's what you think you should do? And quote, I'm making quote bunny ears right now. You can't see. But yes, that whole like idea of what you should and shouldn't do instead of what feels right for you and being okay with that.
And that's the key. The key thing about unmedicated birth is unpacking why a family wants to have an unmedicated birth experience. Mm-hmm. Is it because of this is what I should do versus what I want to do and what I desire for my own birth experience? Mm-hmm. And I think as doulas, and I know as doulas, that's the confidence building, the empowerment building that we provide to families, mm-hmm. is for them to be the driver of their birth experience rather than the bystander.
Because I will say, it makes it when I had a client that was like, oh, I know I want an epidural. And I'm like, great. We just need to figure out when we're ordering that cocktail for you. Mm-hmm. I'm on board. Let's do this. Like, mm-hmm. love it, you know? But yeah, it's definitely, again, I think it goes into that societal thing of like, oh, well, I should breastfeed because people say breast is best, you know, like language is important. Language is powerful. Mm-hmm. And it can influence in so many different ways. And I think that's something too, where it goes down to this expectation of like, you know, and I'm going to be non-inclusive in this, but like mothers do hard things, right? So like, what is a hard thing? Having an unmedicated birth. Like that's your badge. That's your stripes that you earn. But really it's doesn't have to be that way. Mm-mm. You know, it's, you can start chipping away at that societal image very early on, very in the pregnancy, having those conversations.
Right. And that brings up a whole ball game of conversation in my head of just how obstetrics and gynecology evolved and where that view of pain pain intolerance evolved. And why, you know, you have to be do all and be all in birth. That's a whole other topic. I'm just
maybe next
time.
podcast.
next podcast.
Stay tuned, everybody.
Stay tuned. So let's kind of reel it back and talk about what a doula, how, you know, where, when people who haven't ever heard of a doula, they go, a what? Mm-hmm. A doula?
Right.
And then in doula trainings, many doula trainings start with the definition of a doula and how it started as a Greek word meaning woman or mother's servant. Mm-hmm. But really, that definition of a doula has very much evolved. Mm-hmm. And then especially in times of the pandemic. And I know for you as a postpartum doula and now full spectrum trained doula, and me as a postpartum doula, we have filled a different role in this pandemic.
Big time.
So in the pandemic, with families not being able to travel, you know, not wanting to put the grandparents at risk, doulas fill the role of
abuela, of titi, of auntie, of mom, dad, neighbors. I mean, it's even been like, hey, stay over there, like on your side of the fence. Yeah, it's the rise of the doula has come for sure.
Yeah,
with the need.
And so and that rise or that evolution of what the doula has become in the pandemic is that community member that you can lean into for the support that you might not be getting, or not support you don't have access to because of the pandemic. So,
well, you might not get it either, though.
Or you might not get it.
You might not be getting it.
Well, in terms of those families that are being served by the Diverse Doula Project of Community Doula Alliance.
Oh, yeah.
Those families might not get it. So those families are underserved communities on Medicaid, and have limited access.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe not just limited access, but don't know what access they have.
Yes.
So, the doulas within the Diverse Doula Project are community-based doulas. And a community-based doula is somebody who has similar cultural and ethnic backgrounds to the families they serve, maybe linguistic similarities, shared lived experiences, so that the birthing family can look at the doula that's there to support them and say, this is a person
You're my people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Looks like me,
get it.
knows what I've experienced, and can then help me have a better experience that I may or may not otherwise have as a birthing family.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting, too, if you look at the different types of families, too. Like when you look at some marginalized communities, they actually maintain the historical mindset of the doula where they're living with their they're living with multiple generations. They are in a multi-generational household. And sometimes there are people in the household doing the doula role.
It's
naturally
just not the name.
Yes, it's not the name. But then the translation into the healthcare space is where that changes, because then it goes into a authoritarian role of like the doctor says, right? The doctor knows more. And so they might not have the same voice in the hospital room, whereas the doula can be that translator for the family and in that healthcare space. So I think that's...
like what I like to call it is the community builder in that space.
Mm-hmm.
So you might have a family who does not speak English well, but the doula speaks the same native language to that family and can then understand medical terminology and conversation, then translate it to that family. So, for example, one of our doulas speaks Swahili. And if you were to tell a birthing family, you have to have a cesarean section, they will, and not understanding what that term means, they're going to go, oh, okay. Then this Swahili speaking doula says to the family, this is a surgery,
right?
Abdominal surgery. Then that family, their eyes are open and they go, whoa. This is not what we want. Right. And you now have that communication, that understanding of what's going to happen in this moment.
Yeah.
What is the decision that I have to make? Do I have more time for those things? And a community-based doula or any doula that shares lived experience and linguistic similarities.
I mean, you could even go into religion. There's religion aspects behind that. Socioeconomic. I mean, all different layers to what that understanding would be. But yeah, I think it does. It goes into that translational. I love that. The community builder. I love that. That's a really good term. I'm going to take that. Write that down.
So what can people expect now that we've kind of talked about a doula?
Yeah.
And what a community-based doula is specific to Community Doula Alliance. What can listeners of this podcast expect to hear?
More of this. More all things pregnancy, birth, postpartum, looking at societal, systemic issues. I mean, it's a deep dive.
It's a deep dive. I think the one that I'm most excited, or the types of conversations that I'm most excited about with this podcast is talking to doulas. Because there's podcasts about birth work or informing families about
topics.
About topics of birth.
Right.
But what about how to inform families or inform doulas about what's going on out there? And I look forward to talking with doulas and hearing their experience and hearing how things are the same and how things are different. Mm-hmm. Because as a brown doula, I'm going to tell you, I approach birth much differently.
Right.
But I can also see both sides.
Mm-hmm. I think something else too, that as a community, when you find a community of doulas that you vibe with and like you want to be backups for and you want to like refer people to, I think, one thing that we do well with each other, Marnellie, is that we like debrief with each other. Like if something happened in that room that you were like, this is not sitting well with me, or like approaching how to have that conversation with your client postpartum. Mm-hmm. I think that's another thing too, is giving, like the book, The Trauma Stewardship, like allowing to be caretakers and carekeepers for the doulas, having a place for doulas to come and debrief. I think that's the beauty of this too, is that it will almost be therapeutic for doulas to like process how they are as doulas and, get out the anger that might come with having poor treatment in the healthcare system, having doulas that may wear multiple hats, where if maybe you were a former L&D nurse and you decided to go into the doula world, and now you're just like having that hard conversation of like, I am the medical industrial complex, but then as a doula, I'm not. Like, how do I have that conversation? How do I navigate that within myself? And I think that's a really cool thing to bring into this podcast as well.
Yeah.
I'm excited. So if you want to hear, again, we're looking at doing podcasts more regularly, once a month, maybe 2 times a month,
just depends on the interest.
Yeah. We're going with the flow. We're newbies. So, we're going to see where this takes us. And, we definitely want you guys to know that Community Doula Alliance is making a difference here. And if you want to hear more from the Doula Debrief and see what is going on in the community, please subscribe to this podcast. Follow Community Doula Alliance on Instagram to learn more about our programs and, sign up for some of their informational sessions coming up for the fall cohort, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right?
Question mark?
Question mark?
Right. Exclamation point. How about that?
Thank you for listening to the Doula Debrief Podcast from Community Doula Alliance. It is our 1-year anniversary, and we are so excited to celebrate with you. You can show your support by visiting our Instagram page at communitydoulaalliance.com, clicking the link in our bio, where you will be sent to an online ordering form where you can purchase your very own Community Doula Alliance water bottle and pens. By making your purchase, you are in support of our vision to decolonize the birthwork profession and eliminate the gap in maternal-infant health disparities and inequities that disproportionately impact Black, Indigenous, and Latino-AX communities. Thank you so much for your support. We look forward to seeing you out in the community.
Thank you for tuning in and being with us, Marnellie Bishop, Ali Buchanan, as your hosts of the Doula Debrief Podcast from Community Doula Alliance. Please subscribe and listen to this and other episodes on your podcatcher of choice. Like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, and don't forget to ring the bell. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Community Doula Alliance to keep up to date on this show and future CDA events. So thank you again. We'll meet you around the block. Community Doula Alliance, out.